Testosterone can have numerous positive effects in both males and females, provided they're in optimal range. Immune systems don't know when to be activated. Lungs don't know when to inhale or exhale. Hearts don't know when to beat, except for the information that it gets from neurons. The nervous system controls all of that. As loads increase, you have to recruit more and more neurons. It's in its various forms: weight training, endurance work, weight training to failure, or less intense weight training can impact testosterone levels. But I want to remind you that we're talking about testosterone both in males and females. Testosterone can have numerous positive effects in both males and females, provided they're in optimal range. If you look on the web, people say, oh, testosterone is increased by weight training. You want to do big, heavy compound movements, squats and deadlifts and chins and things of that sort. But what about the scientific studies? What's the actual basis for this? Because if you just take a step back and look at this from the perspective of a scientist, you'd say, okay, what is a squat? A squat is loading up a bunch of weights on a bar and then sitting down essentially and standing up over and over again. What's a deadlift? It's lifting heavy weights from the ground. Why would that increase testosterone? This is what's often not discussed in the weight training or even the exercise science community. What would actually stimulate the release of testosterone from the adrenals and or testes? And which one is it? Adrenals or testes or both? And that's often not discussed. But as a neuroscientist, this is the kinds of things we think about, because we think always that genes don't create behavior. Immune systems don't know when to be activated. Lungs don't know when to inhale or exhale. Hearts don't know when to beat, except for the information that it gets from neurons. The nervous system controls all of that. And so really the answer has to be in the neural system that's related to these particular types of weight-bearing exercises. So when you go into this literature, it's hard to find real mechanism. You see a lot of effects. You'll hear things like androgen receptor content, meaning testosterone and its derivatives, receptor content following heavy resistance exercise. And you'll find some examples that, for instance, they do muscle biopsies. They can actually see receptor increases looking at either high volume or low volume, really intense exercise. And you can find a lot of that, but not a lot of mechanism about how the nervous system would do this. And the reason you'd want to know how it can do it is that you could potentially build better protocols or figure out exactly what about these movements is triggering increases in androgen receptors and testosterone. So what's interesting is when you start digging into the more mechanistic studies, what you find is that heavy weight training, so this is weight training where the sets are done with anywhere from 1 to 8 rep range. So this translates differently depending on ratio of muscle fiber type and so forth. But where basically people are working at anywhere from like 70% to 95% of their maximum, or sometimes even going right down to their 1 repetition maximum, really kind of max effort. What you find is that using the nervous system in a way in which they're moving heavy loads, so that I would translate to recruitment of high threshold motor units for you muscle physiologists. And there's a rule in muscle physiology about the neuron recruitment for moving muscles, where you basically use the minimum number of motor units of neurons to activate muscle as you possibly can. As loads increase, you have to recruit more and more neurons. You always hear about recruiting muscle fibers, but really it's recruiting more neurons to recruit more muscle fibers. And what you find is that heavy weight training, but not weight training to failure, where completion of a repetition is impossible, leads to the greatest increases in testosterone.